January 5th, 2022, we've got another update to our favourite weeb game, Genshin Impact, being focused on Liyue and its annual Lantern Rite events. Out of like 3 minutes of content for the trailer, one of them was focused on this weird, mysterious expansion called Enkanomiya. Do you know what that is? Because I didn't till like recently. It then went on to never receive any other promotions on Genshin's official channel, or the media in general, if you exclude a single event. If you do know it, however, or want to know more, come with me as we analyse why exactly this mysterious, ancient, completely illogical in terms of gravity expansion that Genshin impacts Teyvat is an isolated gem. Like, subscribe, and grab some mineral water. We're getting into it. Make sure the water is cold, by the way.
The fate of this world is already sealed. Soul shall turn to dust. Let the flames of redemption burn!
Enkanomiya is weird, really weird. If you haven't noticed, Genshin doesn't like the Mario type of platformer design where massive gaps in the floor lead to your immediate demise. Ignoring domains for this point, have you ever been to the end in Minecraft? That's pretty much Enkanomiya. It's got a few small islands in the vast void, which, like I said, is completely different to everything else in this godforsaken game. It's already established how unique Inazuma is, having independent mechanics, a uniquely hostile atmosphere to a relative level, and having, once again, islands. See the connection? It is Inazuma's flagship expansion after all, since I don't see Tsurumi Island or Seira Island having cool icons when you load in. Overall though, it's got Inazuma's classic terrain of mountains spreading outwards towards the top, similar to Minecraft hoppers. It makes it difficult to climb with the exception of certain flat parts that are intentionally put there for, you guessed it, climbing. Every other nation and area has mountains that are steep, yet go inwards, while Inazuma, and now Enkanomiya, go outwards. However, this is a smaller nitpick, as the main attraction is the islands I yapped about. Unlike Inazuma, which has wave riders you can use to bypass the gaps put between each landmass, Enkanomiya is an effective void, isolating not only you, but each individual island. Unlike Inazuma, each island isn't all that different, excluding the middle island and the Serpent's Bowels, which is where you enter. The Serpent's Bowels give the player a misleading introduction to an otherwise grayscale, monotone and somewhat depressing place. This is extended by the gameplay and story, but that's for later. My main point is, the Serpent's Bowels are like any other cave in Inazuma, leading the player to think it's just like the chasm, with more resemblance to the surface, being Inazuma, unless you played it within 2.4 where the chasm didn't exist, as it came out directly afterwards. It has the turquoise grass of the nation, but underground instead. It also has plenty of water being filled with nature. However, once you progress past this cavern, you're exposed to what Enkanomiya really is. It's a desolate wasteland of fractured pieces of a nation lost to time, having no colour at all besides cyan in certain circumstances, similar to, once again, the chasm. There's also a yellow hue in other circumstances. Yellow is the polar opposite to purple on the colour wheel, helping to show just how isolated it is in comparison to Inazuma, its umbrella nation. However, despite this, the place is a gem. The centre, or Dainichi Mikoshi, contains a tall tower with extremely glowy, cool technology to create Evernight and White Night. It harbours hidden teleporters that only show themselves on the map when nearby, as well as having plenty of loot to take. The reason I'm suddenly talking about mechanics a little before the next section is for a comparison. These teleporters are hidden, the other ones are revealed on the other 4 islands though. The main meat of the comparison though is the fact that there are 3 extra islands. These islands however are very special, as they're unlocked through an epilogue of sorts to the main story. They're almost completely useless outside of the quest, and I only brought up teleporters in order to state that they each have 1, only being unlockable upon beginning said quest. This is very cool, as a big part of Enkanomiya is secretive and unlockable areas, similar to Sumeru, out of all places. Another one worth mentioning is the VShap Research Lab, existing almost entirely for, well, ambience I guess? It's kinda pointless besides an extremely short world quest that takes place over the course of a single objective, as well as like a chest or 2. However, the main thing I personally enjoy about this area is that it goes to show that yes, there are secret islands on the outskirts of Enkanomiya, explaining the awfully bizarre shape of the revealed ocean on the map. It helps to trigger the player's imagination, as quests state that there are 3 remaining teleporters to discover. They see there are 3 empty areas on the map, and like I said, there's the VShap Research Lab, an island on the map that is hidden as an example. Unlike the random Heart Island in Mondstadt as well, there's lore reasons for this. Sick. Overall, the place is very cool. The dead yet embellished nature throughout the place is intriguing, with random oases such as the Serpent's Bowels, 3 significant bodies of water and more. Even on top of all this, the various serpent locations contribute to this general intrigue. The ruins are tall, unique, and in the end, I just love Enkanomiya. It's not too overwhelming, and there isn't a lack of content. The fact those 3 islands are so secretive really helps just give that magic to the place for me, as mystery is something the game slowly loses over time. Exploration grows repetitive, but Enkanomiya is anything but. I'll explain even further in the next section, the gameplay. Let's go. The gameplay is incredibly unique, much like the environment. It involves a branch off of Oculi, making it like every other expansion. The Chasm utilizes Lumine Spire as its individual collectible, while Dragonspine uses Crimson Agates. Chenyu Vale uses the Spirit Cups as well, but one thing all of these have in common is a series of straight progression through leveling something up. It may make more sense to compare these to Elemental Sigils, but they're collected in the manner of Oculi. The point is, Key Sigils, the collectible in Enkanomiya, as shown both within the wiki's organization and how they're revealed on the map, much like the other collectibles, aren't used in this way. In fact, they're used for no real progression mechanic at all, instead being a piece of the puzzles within. I quite like this, as it once again isolates the place from other areas, even using a similar quirk such as revealing on the map in order to create something that is nothing short of useful for determining if it is isolated or unique. Comparison. You can directly compare sigils to the other collectibles throughout Teyvat, much like I have, due to this similarity. On top of this, similar to the Chasm, the collectible is very well intertwined with the core gameplay mechanic of the sub-region, this time not being Dark Mud, but White Knight and Evernight. Instead of having the collectibles allow you to progress through these two, it is the other way around. The whole place is built off these 2 states, somewhat like how Tsurumi Island is built on the states of 3 various days. While the puzzles have involvement with these, I mainly want to state right now that yes, the sigils have that link. They can be disabled or enabled depending on if you're within the Evernight or White Knight version of Enkanomiya, though I will say the sigils are one of the most disconnected mechanics to the 2 statuses out of any of the ones included within this sub-region. Enkanomiya has familiarity with using classic enemies such as Hilichurls, Spectres, Ruined Enemies and more, but it's odd how I've never seen a slime there. That innocence is completely gone it seems, and a lot of Abyss enemies, not including the Chasm series of them, are found throughout. Rift Hounds can be found as well as, uniquely, Bethesmal Vishaps. These are big animalistic primitive beasts that are native to the caverns of Enkanomiya, utilizing a variety of elements that are not intended to be harnessed by their body, but here we are. They've been experimented on by humanity, even found in the aforementioned Vishap research lab, or if you're bored of that, go to the mini-boss directly in the middle of the place. It's pretty cool. That's my commentary on that place. The rest of the puzzles are typically only connected to White Knight and Evernight, which brings me to my first problem with the gameplay design. Not only are they all disconnected from the big collectible, being Key Sigils, but on top of this, the White Knight and Evernight stuff just isn't very interesting after a while, which I guess goes for all the puzzles in general. It's pretty repetitive hit stuff and make stuff move types of puzzles, but with the 2 statuses of the world around you in order to, I guess, add some weird sense of variety, though it kinda just needlessly complicates everything. Despite this, I still go through this exploration because I love you all. I just find it kinda meh as White Knight and Evernight have most of their variety in the goddamn appearance of the world around you. I mean, like, what else does it do? White Knight can let you open metal doors, and Evernight can let you open blue doors. On top of this, what activates them? White Knight activates a fully built thing that needs energy you can hit, while Evernight rebuilds a not fully built thing that can now suddenly be hit. Yeah, a little repetitive, I know. The biggest difference is the ability to use those floating fishies, which are mainly used in order to get the player to the outskirts of Enkanomiya, such as, once again, the Vishap Research Lab, as well as various loci islands, or big, tall, cool buildings in order to separate 3 mysterious dimensions. Both names work within reasonable bounds. But yeah, in the end, the main thing to take away from this section is incredibly uniquely isolated due to the distinct features such as the Key Sigils, White Knight or Evernight. However, there are flaws of repetition, and this has to do with the isolation as well, so I'll cover it later. Just know this place is still a gem however, as despite my complaints, the unique stuff is a breath of fresh air, and you could technically consider my commentary on the hidden 3 islands from the environment section as relevant information for this part as well, as teleporters kind of fall under the realm of gameplay and mechanics. Let's move to the story and characters now, as those teleporters and hidden islands have a lot to do with that stuff.
So
Let's get a move on, shall we?
What's with you joining forces with them? I would say this is a nice surprise, but it's really not that surprising.
Enkanomiya is exceedingly dangerous right now.
Here's hoping I have the chance.
This tower seems to hear my wishes.
There's darkness churning inside the Daimichi Mikoshi!
Do not come any closer.
Do you honestly have another choice?
Before we cover any story, quests, or characters within Enkanomiya, there is something incredibly important worth noting that helps develop my arguments on why it's so isolated, as well as just a little bit towards why it's a gem. The whole sub-region is locked behind a world quest. Not just any world quest either, well, yes. It kind of is just any ordinary world quest, unlike the chasm, where the place is incredibly noticeable due to, well, the chasm itself, or Dragonspine, where the place isn't even underground, Enkanomiya is underground. We know that though, so why am I bringing it up? Well, back to the chasm. Due to its reputation in clear opening on the surface, as well as the interlude and Archon quests that build on it, people go there and do the world quest that unlocks it. The same can't be said for Enkanomiya, as people aren't naturally notified of it. There was the 3 Realm Gateways event or whatever it was called, but it took place like a month and a half after the area's initial addition in version 2.4, and was overshadowed by things like the Lantern Rite. However, that specific point is irrelevant considering the chasm's relationship with that weird Inazuma event, and how it got more content in 2.6 instead of getting 2 loads of content at once. But one event versus an event and 2 permanent quests is a crazy comparison. Enkanomiya is so isolating as well, because of what the story is primarily about. At first, it's reasonably normal. Completing the initial world quest is a pretty generic experience, letting a shrine main of Watatsumi Island guide you through the various steps in order to unlock a secret entrance to a mysterious place of depths, in order to gain some coral. The mystery is cool, as well as the feeling of finding secrets in the world you've grown so familiar with. It's similar to that of recontextualization. However, the fact Enkanomiya is locked behind such a generic world quest really reminds me of Hollow Knight's Hive area. There's a whole area out of like 9 within the map, serving as effectively a secret. It's relatively isolated with significantly less content than the other places, receiving its only boss versions later. It's hidden behind a secret wall. Yeah, that's it. This whole area is behind a secret wall. You can take it as intentionally easy, much like any other path within the game, or like me, where the developers are putting in the effort to make whole areas that aren't even guaranteed to be found on somebody's first playthrough, without access to the wide web and a desire for guides and spoilers. So yeah, I think Enkanomiya is the same. I really appreciate the sheer effort put into an area that is also not guaranteed to be looked into. I mean, I wouldn't have found out about it if it weren't for the fact previous viewers had asked me to cover it, as well as the inevitable fact that spoilers exist. It's a bit of an off-the-topic tangent, but yeah, overall, cool to have such an effort behind such irrelevant walls, but it makes it feel like a hidden gem of sorts due to the sheer quality of the area, paired with the fact that it's extremely isolated due to its uniquely hidden and inconsequential nature. However, I wouldn't have minded if they put more time and effort into the quest specifically, as it could have made for a nice Archon quest. See, once you get into Enkanomiya, you meet a troublemaker named Enjo who serves to help you significantly through your expeditions. He guides you, gives you objectives, and teaches you about the Shades of Tokoyo, or however you pronounce that, who do the same thing, being shades of the past citizens of Enkanomiya. This cool guy turns out to be a goddamn— wait a sec, let's go back. You continue doing cool little chores until you go back to the middle of Enkanomiya in order to retrieve that said coral, leading to fight Bathismal Vishaps, which I mentioned in the gameplay section. This unlocks a mini-boss, but once you think you're done, Enjo comes back. He then turns into a goddamn Pyro Abyss Lector, which is one of the other new enemies within this new place. He is now called the thing calling itself Enjo, which I find nice, and the plot twist is great for many reasons. While yes, a story quest is a story quest, and the characterization is usually more lackluster, Enjo is quite a nice character majority of the time. He's entertaining and shares a similar role to Tartaglia, but for Enkanomiya. The 3 Realms Gateway stuff shows this.
You're just trying to stall for time with small talk again!
Huh. I guess maybe you're not so clued up after all. Look, I understand that seeing me has gotten you a little agitated, but frankly, the fact that you're still so fired up and raring to go after the long journey here is a bit of a problem for me.
Within this event, you run some more errands, and you run into the man himself again, this time telling you your partner has been a Vishap this whole time, assisting you after serving as a threat and leaving. This is why I made the Tartaglia comment. Sure, Enjo was a bad guy, but he's reasonably chill, admitting himself he's just another member of the Abyss Order. He also says he's visited Enkanomiya plenty of times, helping this argument. The reason I bring this up is for Enkanomiya to have their own Tartaglia in contrast to the rest of Teyvat, and to have this character only show up in this area is a form of isolation and an active separation from the rest of the game, containing its own little ecosystem. Finally, Enjo was a part of the Abyss Order at the end of the day, like I said, being the most isolated and disconnected from the main domains of the story within Genshin Impact. This is once again another act of isolation, but the dude is a Chad within the game, showing just how much of a gem Enkanomiya truthfully is. So in the end, what can I say? They should have had voice acting and made the main quests into a big one like I implied earlier. Generic sure, but the event did it, do it here. Also, link a playable character to the thing. The damn area got overshadowed by Shenhe back then, who I didn't even care for very much if I had to be brutally honest. Extra part I recorded like a day or two after the rest, so excuse the differing mic quality, but I think it's incredibly important to mention just how integral Enkanomiya is to the whole story of the game completely. Chronologically, it's utterly disconnected, but in terms of lore and world building, it's a phenomenal resource, which means it is unisolated in terms of backstory, but isolated in terms of, well, the game itself. I prioritize game design talk, but it helps show just how much of a gem Enkanomiya is. That is all. Moving on now. It's a little hard to talk about this too much as I've covered all domains throughout the other 3 bits, so consider this as more of like a summary of the isolation points I've already made, you know? If you remember, the environment is a big player already in this League of Isolation, having individually isolated islands as well as that terrain being infinitely unique to Enkanomiya, still incredibly different to its umbrella nation Inazuma, which also hosts islands. This isolates it furthermore from the rest of the game, even being in more of a grayscale, colourless location. This is incredibly alien for Genshin, and Enkanomiya even lacks purely wild locations, always containing ruins of minimal variety, all of this, of course, excluding the Serpent's Bowels. The gameplay is disconnected, which, while making it feel similar to Sumeru Rainforest in terms of accessibility, is also incredibly isolating from how the 2 main mechanisms have almost no relation to each other. They're repetitive and uninspired, being very bare bones, which can complement the whole sub-region as a whole. The lack of slimes, common inclusion of bathysmal Vishaps, as well as the Abyss enemies in both the gameplay and storyline even create a different ecosystem of, well, everything when compared to any other place in the game. It's truly interesting, similar to going into the deep dark in Minecraft and then comparing it to the surface or something. There are even new Pyro variations of Spectres and Abyss Lectors. They rhyme. Now, in terms of story, like I briefly mentioned just before, it mostly complements the gameplay side of things, but the inclusion of no returning characters from the other stories in the game besides Sangonomiya Kokomi in the 3 Realms Gateway event briefly helps make it feel cut off from everything else. I feel like the Abyss is going to be handled similarly to Enkanomiya, and it really helps to excite me if I had to be honest. Anyway, yeah, Enkanomiya is isolated, and the way they pull off this isolation, paired with what pulls it off, paired with the place in general, helps me form one other opinion. It's a gem. Overall, Enkanomiya is an isolated gem. Like, subscribe, join the membership, and get excited because next, we'll be covering the innocent mountains of Chenyu Vale. Still gonna finish it though. Bye!
Stop! Oh, my life is flashing before my eyes. That woman with the slender pupils, what does she call herself?
Huh? How do you know about her?
Her name, what is it?